Yes, for a bright taste and a bracing sparkle, for perfect refreshment every time, there's nothing like ice-cold Coca-Cola.
Far less sweet than the cola you and I know, because there is no coca in this cola. The acronym stands for Cost of Living Adjustment, and it's an increase to your retirement income sources like Social Security and pensions. You can think of cola like a raise from your employer, but can you guess why it's provided?
Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick.
Well, it's a little-known friend, or foe really, known as inflation. But what is inflation? Inflation is simply the increasing cost of goods and services over time. Think about the cost of a common good like milk, for instance. The average cost for this white gold in the 1930s was 26 cents per gallon. Today, it'll cost you more than 12 times that at roughly $3.50. That, my friends, is inflation. Now, inflation can rise based on an increase in production costs, such as raw materials or wages, which is formally referred to as cost-push inflation. Continuing our example, if the number of milk-producing cows was reduced by, say, lower counts of breeding, or maybe disease that caused widespread death, there would be a shortage of milk. But the farmer's expenses to produce each gallon of milk remain the same, so he'll have to raise the price of each gallon to keep the operation going. Demand is the secondary driver of inflation, which is caused by stronger consumer demand for a product or service. This is formally known as demand pull inflation. Remember the chucklesome Got Milk commercials from the 90s?
Hello, for $10,000. Who Excuse me?
They weren't just funny. They were effective in getting consumers thinking about and ultimately buying gallons upon gallons of milk. That increase in demand came with a price, as farmers soon realized they could charge more for the same gallon of milk and people would be willing to pay it. Inflation has averaged 3% or so per year, which doesn't really sound like a whole lot, but the long-term effect can be devastating to individuals who don't receive a raise each year. Looking at an individual earning the national average annual income of roughly $50,000 per year, not receiving a raise would be devastating. Assuming they spend the entire $50,000 on expenses, so living paycheck to paycheck like the majority of Americans do, it would not take very long before they would need double what they were earning, $100K. I would say that's pretty rough. But there's 1,000 different types of products and services out there. So how does the Social Security Administration and these pension institutions figure your annual increase? The oldest method is the easiest to understand. Fill a shopping cart full of common household items and check out, meaning go to the cash register and check out. Fill the same cart with the same items a year later. Do you suppose the groceries would cost less or more? The answer is more, and that increase is converted into a percentage and used to increase your annual income. And this increase is simple to compute too. Just take the difference in price from year to year and divide it by the cost of the groceries on the first visit. Every year is different, and because interest rates take years or even decades to experience any significant changes, it's likely for the change to be closer to the 10-year average. But you'll typically hear 3%, as that's an average based on a longer time horizon, much more like 30 years, for instance. Now, the modern method of calculating your annual increase is actually based on something called CPIW, and it comes under a lot of scrutiny by economists who claim it's a gross understatement or underestimate of price increases across all consumer spending, and that its shortcoming is passed on to, you guessed it, you. If you'd like to learn more about CPIW, you can head back to our channel and look for the video. Although Social Security was enacted in the 1930s, all the way back when President Roosevelt was in office, COLA wasn't provisioned as part of the Social Security Amendment until 1972, with the automatic annual increases beginning in 1975. Looking back at increases in those days, things were actually a lot different. The very first COLA adjustment announced in 1975 was for 8%. Compare that to the recent 10-year average of 1.65%, and we can see how inflation and cola increases have come down significantly over time. The 10-year average from 1975 to 1985 was 7.66%. One interesting aside here is that the ghost record of 1983. Well, the answer for this missing year is pretty straightforward. The administration decided to shift from fiscal to calendar year, and that is why your COLA adjustment happens in January now instead of July like it used to. For those wondering what became of the ghost year of 83, it was simply consolidated in with 84. Moving on to the next 10-year average from 1986 to 1995, COLA is reduced by nearly half to 3.48%. 1996 to 2005 moved even lower to an average of 2.37. 2006 to 2015 took a nominal bump to 2.4, with the final 6 years averaging 1.6%. So we see a sliding trend here as COLA makes its way from the highs of the mid-70s and early 80s to the low averages of today, the effects of which started in 1977 during President Carter's second term, when the administration increased interest rates to combat inflation at the time, and ultimately tipping the economy into a recession that was left in the hands of President Reagan. One of the economic tools used to increase economic activity and ultimately pulling the economy out of the recession was to increase the money supply by lowering interest rates, and lucky for everyone, it worked. Since then, rates have been on a very slow decline, with a few years of increases outside a couple inflationary periods like that of the late 80s and early 90s. For the most part, over the past 36 years, we have been on a rate cool down. From here, no one really knows where COLA will go, but regardless of its direction, we hope this clarifies how it works, where it's been, and just how important it is to your ability to keep up with the rising cost of goods and services over time.